Thanks very much, John. Thank you. I was just noticing how everything was going like clockwork on time for this whole conference. I was thinking you guys are so efficient and spot on, and this one, though, I'm afraid we're starting 5 minutes late. So there we are, and it's thinned out a little bit, hasn't it, from earlier? But anyway, you know, it's all about quality, not quantity. So welcome everybody. I'm Simon Whittemore, head of Enterprise and Digital Futures in Jisc, which is the sort of R&D department of Jisc. And today I'm going to talk about Jisc itself. It's a familiar friend, but somewhat changed, I think, over the past couple of years. So you might welcome a bit of an update on that. And I'm also going to talk about the directorate I work for, Digital Futures, how we work, and some of the key projects, particularly the Prospect Alumnus one, which we've been running for the past year or so, with mixed results. So first and foremost, a little bit then about Jisc as we are now today. And also, by the way, we'll have 10 minutes or so at the end for discussion and questions, so be very interested to get your views then as well. So, okay, so Jisc, who are we? Well, I think most of you know who we are, and there's some key characteristics to that. We are not for profit. You know, that's a very important factor. We work on behalf of the sector, so we provide trusted advice and guidance for, and when we say the sector, we're talking UK-wide, we're talking HE, FE, and skills providers. So it's very extensive, it's very broad, but we need equally to be very strategic and selective about what we engage in with limited resources, obviously. We work with vendors and all sorts of players across the sector, and obviously key stakeholders like you, CISA, to provide benefits to the sector, really, and deals. We'll give you some examples of that in a couple of slides' time. And also we provide shared infrastructure and services for the sector, and you've heard a little bit. It was quite nice listening to Simon Price earlier, talking about research data management being such a successful program. So that's a good example of that, somewhat in the old Jisc, but still the benefits of that being very much felt today, which is the case for much of the investment we've made over the past decade and beyond, I would say. So we're not a vendor. Under our own oversight, that means we're independent. So a couple of years ago, there was a review conducted by HEFCE, and the change is that we're now an independent charity. Obviously, we are still funded by the key funders, and we have a funders and owners group, and we're accountable to them, but we're accountable primarily really to our customers, which is you in the sector. And we're really dedicated, therefore, to your needs, your collective needs. And a lot of our work recently and at the moment is about trying to establish what those collective needs are. And you'll hear about Codesign, our method and our approach in Digital Futures, and that's a process by which we establish what your needs are and build a consensus for that. Everything we do, everything we create is for the benefit of the sector, put back into the sector financially. And I think the fact that we're a neutral broker, we're unbiased, you know, still counts for a lot, and builds trust and creates opportunities for the sector to go forward in a sustainable way. Okay, and what about our mission and our vision then? It's about making the UK the most digitally advanced country in the world, really, education and research nation in the world. Obviously there are infrastructural dependencies for that, but in many ways we're quite well advanced down that road, I think, and that's very much key to Jisc vision, in partnership with a whole range with other partners. And really, our mission is to enable those within HE and FE to be fully competitive and to perform at the absolute forefront of practice, in whether it's in teaching, research, whatever it is, and to be empowered through the use of technology, digital technology in particular. So those are our vision and mission. Okay, so I guess you could say we do three key things, broadly speaking. I've mentioned the shared infrastructure and services, and you can see there some examples of that. You're all familiar with Janet, it's the most obvious example. There's the shared data center, it's very much a growing area of our activities, the data center, storage. You're all familiar with Edurome as well. And we're building different examples of shared services and shared infrastructure all the time. One which I'm going to speak about briefly later is learning analytics. We've got a technical framework for that with a range of products within that, which has been delivered through our Digital Futures area. And that's an example of more examples. And we're still doing work within research data management to continue to deliver value to institutions in that area. You can see some examples there of the deals we do with vendors and partners across the sector. And obvious examples of that have been things like what was called Jisc Collections, doing deals with publishers, obviously. But we do it now across the board, whether it's with Microsoft, whether it's with an organization like Tableau there, which is about visualization of data, really to bring the best technology, I guess, to the most appropriate technology in the right place to the sector where there is a consensus of demand for that, and to broker that for them in a cost-effective way. And the other part is really advice and guidance, and for that is a key role. We're a trusted provider there. And you can see there, we provide consultancy services. You can see some examples there, financial X-ray, intelligence services. Again, we're working on a range of future areas that highlight good practice and bring the intelligence that we've derived across the sector to you. So broadly, three things. Some numbers for you. People always like numbers. So as you can see, vast number of users that we're catering for one way or another. Many of those are users from the last few years. We're gaining new users all the time of various different Jisc products and services across the UK, but also abroad, actually. That's quite a growing area as well. And as you can see, colleges and those three different types of customer that we serve are high numbers in themselves. And we're doing more and more, I would say, within FE these days. So that's probably an area where we've increased our activity somewhat, in line with need, I think, and opportunity. Okay, so who runs Jisc these days? Hopefully you recognise some of these faces. But the key thing here is we have a new chief executive, and that's Paul Feldman up there. And he's only just started, took over from Martin. And he essentially is just come in very positive and very much about what Jisc has to offer is unique in terms of being a trusted broker across the sector, and very much into teamwork, working together, and very customer focused in his approach as well. So quite exciting times really with a new chief exec on board. And there you can see the team beneath him. And where I sit there is under Phil Richards in the, as I say, the Digital Futures R&D area. So we'll look at that in a little more detail. But before we do, something around how we engage with you. One of the changes over the past few years, has been building extensive account management structure to serve the sector. Which we used to have the RSCs, of course, but this is much more extensive. It's much more individual customers. We've got our account managers are right on top of what's going on in each college and university, and that's a level of service we couldn't provide before. So a significant change. You can see some of the key leads for the different areas across the UK there. Will Allen here, you will have seen, is here with us today and yesterday, and here he is. Will's over here. If you fancy talking to Will, please do at any stage after this or tomorrow, and a number of other key people in the different areas there. But yeah, that's a key part of what we're doing now, making sure we engage directly to understand our customers' needs, to be able to respond to those needs in a coherent way. So that's a very strong advance. And back to Digital Futures. So we used to be called Innovation, and we used to use things like, well, there's been a lot of talk actually at this event about methodologies. We've heard about Lean, Kanban, a number of, and Agile and what have you. In fact, we are using some of those within Digital Futures. But we're very much more of a sort of R&D function now, which means we have a kind of pipeline approach to developing products and services. And within that pipeline, some projects advance all the way to the end to a service. To be honest, not many, because we have to be sure that there's demand and that there's real customer value in that service. And some get stopped at various points along that life cycle there. And quite a number are in the discovery stage at the moment that we're doing, because that's a key stage where we need to ensure that there is a good value proposition, that there is a good business case, and a couple of projects I'm going to talk about are at that stage. Typically, other projects at the moment that I'm going to discuss are at kind of Jisc Alpha and Jisc Beta stage. So we've got this new process, but it's fairly early days, and we're still kind of working out how to make it work perfectly, especially with the rest of Jisc as well. But yeah, that's our innovation pipeline. That's kind of the way we work. And we work with a vast range of organisations, really. The key word here is co-design. And I think the key message is that in the past, you may have felt that we had committees, there was representation on those committees to take forward ideas and needs from the sector in a very constructive and representative way, and then we put out grant calls, as you know. Now that's all very much changed. We work now in a kind of co-designed way, which means we start with the needs and requirements that you articulate to us through our stakeholders. And as you can see here, actually that wasn't deliberate, you CISG being the first one at the top, I promise, but it's handy anyway. So yeah, there's an example of some of the partners we're working with. And really, these partners are shaping what we're doing, and that's the big change. We're co-designing with them exactly what we're going to focus our efforts on, where they believe the need is, and the consensus we can drive through them. Especially, I guess, the first four, but all of the rest as well, and beyond. I mean, that's not exclusive list. You can see there some numbers again around some of the ideas and numbers of ideas and how we've prioritized the different challenges. I'll come on to what the co-design challenges are in a moment. And large numbers of senior stakeholders engaged here, but in a quite directed way, in a quite specific way. We cannot waste people's time. We want to be sure that we get the best value out of the time we spend from them. People are very busy, and we want to deliver value to the customer as quick as possible in that pipeline. Okay, so some of the co-design challenges that we're running at the moment, and I'm going to focus most on Prospect Alumnus, which is the one I've been running. But research at risk, I probably won't talk about that much here, but that's been bringing together a whole range of different projects and objectives, from open access to ORCID to all sorts of things under the research at risk banner. FailTag is basically the FE work. We've been doing a partnership with BIS for quite some time now. Digital learning, I'll talk about that a bit, and especially digital capability and the work and the framework we've developed there. Learning analytics, I've already mentioned. Again, I'll go through some of the key products that we've developed there and services we've developed and how we're bringing the institutions on board with that gradually. And business intelligence, which is probably one of our sort of pioneering areas, I think, and highly relevant, obviously, to you, CISG. So those are the key co-design challenges. We're deliberately kind of limiting the numbers of these. Again, in the past, there was pretty much a let thousands of flowers bloom approach. There were pros and cons to that, but these days we've got to be very clear about doing fewer things but doing them better and delivering value earlier. So what did we start with in Prospect to Alumnus? This was kind of the brief we had, and this derived from the workshop we did with our co-design partners, and it was really all about the student journey. How can we make that journey a more joined up experience, a better experience for the student primarily, but that also entails making it a better experience for staff as well, who are working with the data and working with the systems on that journey. And obviously as part of that, we were looking to ultimately think about things like CRM for student to manage that whole life cycle, which remains, I think, a bit of a holy grail, but we'll look at some of the issues that came up in this. That's where we started in 2014. And this has been a huge challenge, I must say. And it's not an easy nut to crack. We've had a number of projects within this portfolio, and there's been quite a lot of change within those projects as well. As I say, that innovation pipeline requires us to be agile and change and stop and start where appropriate. So this is the current portfolio as you see it. There's 4 key project areas. But these, in fact, might morph into just themes or aspects of these might morph into themes in 2016, so again, we need to be very flexible about how we take them forward. But those are the objectives we're trying to achieve. Always improve the student experience and the efficiency, which David Sweeney emphasised so much yesterday, for institutions remains a key aim of ours. And part of that is the student systems that are being used. But there are no easy answers there. I think we all know that. I will say as well, by the way, my colleague Ruth Drysdale is here. Again, if anybody else wants to talk to Ruth, Ruth is in the Prospect Alumnus team, in my enterprise team as well. Many of you know Ruth already, so please do talk to Ruth afterwards and tomorrow as well. And she's very much involved in this portfolio too. So we've got some quite charming pictures, I think, that try and articulate some of the challenges around this. It is really about trying to step into the student's shoes. It is about trying to understand the student perspective, the student. I mean, obviously, the whole point about this is there's not one student, you know, the non-traditional student is the norm now. But broadly speaking, you know, that sort of, that glass ball there is showing that, you know, they may not differentiate between, you know, time spent with their friends, getting the bus here and there, doing the timetable and getting the qualification. It's all in one sort of massive experience for them. And I think that's an important consideration. Obviously it's generalization, but I think that's broadly true. So we need to try and step into their shoes. That's partly what we've been trying to do with Prospect Alumnus. And this project, which is about optimizing that journey, is one that Ruth's been running with some other colleagues and been going out there and visiting a number of different institutions, 20 to 30 institutions, to talk to them in detail about what their pain points are on that journey. What is working, what's not working for them, and understanding some student profiles, different types of students, and what's the kind of difficulties they face, whether it's international students, whether it's, you know, particular ethnographic types. We've gathered quite a lot of intelligence from that process of talking to institutions and gathering those pain points. And at the moment we're analysing and synthesising the results of that, and we have found a few key things that I just wanted to highlight. And one of those things, I guess, is a gap really between the perspective, inevitable gap between the perspective of the student services people, you know, groups like Amoshi represent that, and between those running and managing the systems. And it's not intractable by any means, but it does make for a slightly different perspective, and it is something that, you know, as it says there, those institutions that are able to bring together those different perspectives effectively in their activities are going to be at an advantage in cracking this nut of the student experience. So that's definitely key, and obviously there are other roles involved. Broad feedback, contentious statement, but I'm not sure actually it is that contentious. Student record systems no longer fit for purpose. Some nods in the audience. You know, a lot of the ones, I mean, of course, there's a mixed picture across the sector, but a lot of the ones that people have were kind of developed originally for a different purpose and a reporting purpose, and they've developed and they've been evolved and improved, but, you know, in some cases they're fairly monolithic, and to change those is a huge undertaking. An institution's lifeblood is a student data, so it's a huge risk, obviously, to consider and to do that. So that's a very hard challenge. Some institutions obviously have their own bespoke systems. That's not an easy route either in terms of maintenance, in terms of resources required, all the rest of it, sustainability. But I think that's the broad conclusion. They're not really fit for purpose in the current rate of change. You know, programs have different timescales, they stop and start at different times. Students have changed very much in the way they operate, all the personal devices, we've got identity problems. It's not really catered for in an efficient way in the traditional systems. There are all sorts of issues around international students that we were hoping to help with, and we may yet. CRM, I mean, there's some CRM vendors here, and that is becoming more and more prominent, and people are beginning to use it more to sort of address different parts of the student life cycle, but we're not quite yet at a kind of end-to-end relationship management approach to the student journey. Used mainly at the beginning, I think, is probably the truth there in that kind of marketing and admissions area. So I think we found that student journey mapping and service design is a really helpful way to look at this by going through. We've delivered a few workshops with institutions, and we may well deliver more. We've done some work in this area in the past as well, by going through with institutions, what is the experience of particular types of students through that journey, what are the pain points, and what are the key things that would improve their experience, using service design techniques, which is what this is about, really. It's the quality of service and the unity of that service. Okay, another project in this portfolio is called Student Systems of the Future, and again, there are no clear answers. We're on a very early stage of this one, but you can see there a list of current contextual issues, some of which I've highlighted already, really. Some university systems clunky. I mean, that's, again, a generalization, but you do hear people say that. I've said many of those things about non-traditional students being the norm, and the interoperability remains an issue as well. So for student systems of the future, these are some of the key objectives, perhaps, which is around providing some sort of single interface. And I know many institutions already do that to some extent through a single portal, which routes off in different directions. But students still find that they've got different identities, different points where they need to put identities in, and the identities they come with are not necessarily catered for. And that interface is something I think that remains an objective. And then there's another way of looking at this as well. What emerged in our optimizing work is that perhaps rather than replacing these very large and sort of significant systems that deal with the lifeblood of the institution, perhaps we should think about redesigning, re-engineering some of the processes around them. And maybe there's instead of that 20 million you might spend on a new student record system, whatever, maybe there's a 5 million investment in some real process improvement, some process analysis, some automation of processes, above that, a layer of process automation to improve that, to create more sustainability for the way you work, rather than to be reliant on that system being updated all the time. That reflects some feedback we've had from some institutions who are already thinking in that way. And IT departments are changing, they're becoming much more, and I think actually this conference is a good reflection of that. We've had such a variety of flavors of presentations, and there's more creativity these days, I think, as part of this work. More like design studios, and the service and the service design becomes core to what IT is doing now. Flexible study is obviously a critical part of that student journey. How are we doing for time? Okay, I need to speed up as ever. Okay, quick run through then some of the other projects in Prospect Alumnus. We're doing a piece of work which is really exploratory at the moment. It's about destinations data, and it's mainly for FE. And that's not to say that we think the HE destinations and leavers survey, that side of things is cracked, because it isn't. But we think we can do something working with BIS, who we're talking to about this, and the AOC as well. To support BIS, they've got new outcomes-based success measures that they're consulting on at the moment. So we're also we're talking to them and other potential providers about how we might be able to provide some data visualization services to support institutions, in FE institutions this is, in understanding and improving the outcomes of their leavers. So that's an exploratory piece of work at the moment, very much in the discovery phase. Then we have Learner Cradle to Grave. And this I'd describe really as more of a vision, really. And the vision here is trying to support mobility, as it says there, trying to help the student have more ownership on their own records. And there are lots of components to making this work. And we may break down those components, we will, into their constituent projects. But it's really about, the idea is an end-to-end student record, including academic, non-academic, reflective, all the rest of it, that they own themselves, that they can edit themselves, that they can maybe on their own webpage, that they can maintain themselves, but it's verified, and it's got verified information from institutions and from employers. And that's kind of an endpoint that we think we want to get to, and would really support mobility, which is still very much a need, and something that's going to dramatically expand, I think, dramatically be a lot more of across the sector. But it does involve working with the here and trying to see how that can be maximized, and see how we can extend usage of that, and extend the usage of the data from the here as well. There's opportunities there, and other standards, if you like the ULN and a personal learning record. So obviously for these things we're working closely with, or we're talking a lot to HEDIP and the Data Landscape program, and also Data Futures and HESA are going to be increasingly important to this. Again, early stages here, but that's the vision we want to get to, and that's learner cradle to grave. We did a couple of projects which are no longer going forward, but it's worth mentioning them because they were trying to solve specific problems, such as the ESMS, which was an employability skills match system, which was trying to bridge the gap between education and employment. And the fact that employers, broadly speaking, have to spend a year, they say, most of the main employers say, have to spend a year investing in their graduates, even the most well-qualified ones, to make them work ready, to make them effective. Because actually it's not the degree itself that makes them employable, it's the skills behind that, it's the work experience, it's their resilience, it's their versatility, it's their communication skills, it's their problem-solving skills, those kind of things. So we built a prototype, really, a clickable prototype service here that took learners through a pathway to get their skills better recognised. And we were going to use open badges as the recognition mechanism. And we developed a skills framework, but that project was shelved for now. And in fact, it's being continued, however, in a slightly different form. That C is the first letter of Cineca, which is an Italian organisation who are very similar to Jisc in many ways, who are taking that forward, but trying to address a real-world problem there, but a big challenge. And the other one, Technology for Employability, looked at some of the issues around how technology is being used to support employability within institutions. We continue to do work in that area. But that's on our website. There's some information of the findings in that project. Okay, moving on swiftly. Business intelligence, one of our key pieces of work at the moment. Here our partnership with HESA is absolutely critical for this, and it's a very productive and effective partnership. And it's all about replacing Heidi for them to make it much more wider in its appeal, so that, you know, we're starting with strategic planners here, and they're very key party, but also other senior roles within institutions, so that, you know, not just data managers, if you like, get involved in this whole area of business intelligence and contribute to it. It will be live soon, I understand, and this is about really providing new visualizations, new analyses, and updating Heidi into something much more fit for purpose of this age. And the other part to the Business Intelligence Service, and by the way, Miles Danson runs all of this. Do contact Miles if you have any questions in this. He'd be keen to hear from you. I'm sure many of you know about this already. It's Heidi Lab, and that's more experimental, and it's about really looking at some key questions that we've derived from working with the sector, particular challenge areas where they would particularly like data visualizations. And again, we're working very much with the sector there. We're in fact in a very agile way. We're using agile processes, you know, scrums and sprint processes to bring people together to maximize the time we spend to identify those questions and hopefully provide a range of data visualizations and collections to solve them. So that's business intelligence. Learning analytics has been also quite a success, I would say, and we've got 50 or so universities and colleges already engaged in this. You can see there's a technical framework we've provided. It includes all of those things, including a student learning analytics app. And key as well here is the code of practice. We realized very early on in this work that the ethical side to this is critical, and institutions need a lot of guidance and help with that. So that's very much a key offering here is a code of practice covering the legal and ethical side, and the network itself, of course, to support people in this work. So we're currently in phase 1, and we'll gradually bring more institutions into this to, to do a readiness assessment really in the next phase 2 and 3, looking towards 2016-17 for bringing it to being a full Jisc service. Paul Bailey runs that, so again, please contact Paul if you have interest in learning analytics. And finally, of those projects, we're near the end, by the way, digital capability, which is run by Sarah Davis, another colleague in Digital Futures. And here, oh no, that's not the slide, so there we go. And here we've developed a framework, really, which tries to identify the different components of digital capability, all the way from that identity that I talked about to the use of IT, ICT, you know, right down to your own devices. But around those, we're looking at, you know, management of digital data information, creation there in the top right, and content. And in the bottom right, we're looking at the communications and everything around digital that enables participation and collaboration. And then in the bottom left, we're looking at everything around learning and development that can be provided through digital. So there's a whole range of services behind this. For example, there's a change agent network, which is where you bring students together as well with staff for mutual benefit, mutual understanding. There's the digital leadership offering, which is where we work directly with institutions to help leaders become more confident and more effective in their leadership of the digital agenda, embedding that in institutional strategy. And there's an open online development offer as well here. So again, another exciting, broad-ranging piece of work. And Sarah Davis, please contact my colleague there for further information on that one. So that virtually concludes my presentation. I just want to leave you with a few questions and hopefully a few minutes at least to have a small discussion or a few questions. Some of the things we found in this challenge is how can we bridge effectively, I mean all of us, how can we bridge effectively that divide, if you like, between those who are focused very much on the service side for the students and those who have the headache of managing these systems and the data flow and all of those kind of challenges. Is the era of these monolithic systems coming to an end, and how can we take that forward? There were references in a way yesterday from David Sweeney and others actually about, you know, there's an opportunity that we all need to grasp at the moment around data modeling, around data standards, and he referred obviously to the data landscape program and data futures. But there is a challenge around systems as well, and what do we want to do about that without going back to the MAC initiative that he also brought up yesterday. So this is something we're grappling with. I'd be interested in your views on that as well. And as I say, is part of the solution some business process re-engineering, automation of business process re-engineering. There are more and more business analysts used across the sector, I notice, and there's enterprise architecture as well used by many institutions. Some find that controversial, some find it helpful. But is business process re-engineering helpful in having less dependency on these monolithic systems? And then student CRM, you know, CRM being both business intelligence and relationship management. Can we provide that kind of joined up service in a more modern way? And I think really, well, I'll perhaps leave those questions up. Yep, that's me, but I'll leave those questions up and hand over if anybody has any questions, I think. Over to you, really. Who's first? John? Thank you.
I don't know this question. It's not working.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a question or just... Let's start at the beginning. Thank you very much for teaching me how some of my users must feel when I don't consult them and I spend their money. I actually feel really quite frustrated that Jisc do this and they're going to be putting the fee up year on year when so many of the things you've got here are things that we are doing ourselves. I cannot see that if Jisc come up with a one-size-fits-all student system that we will all flock to it. It won't be in our timescale, it won't be on our priority list. I really would like Jisc to consult more thoroughly, more deeply with its audience before it goes off and finds its best mates and does another interesting project that it finds interesting. I'm sorry, but I got to say it how it is. That's how I feel, really very frustrated. I can see some of the things you guys do are great, but those are when you have much wider, deeper buy-in, like research, the research data management stuff. But some of this stuff, you saying, you know, do we need, is it, and then can we provide a digital end-to-end CRM interface? Why is that just remit? Why is it just remit to decide whether monolithic student record systems are coming to the end of their life? I'm just utterly frustrated.
Right, thank you for that. Great. No, disgust, yeah, frustration, which is not uniquely felt, that frustration, either in the sector or in Jisc, I have to say. But anyway, we are not proposing to create a new end-to-end CRM system. We're not proposing to create a new student record system. We're trying to, as I described in the projects, the optimizing project, to identify what your pain points are and try and help solve them. It's not a simple matter to do that. These are really just questions. When I say we, I'm talking we, the whole sector. We're with you on that. But this is not what we're proposing. Should Jisc create an end-to-end CRM? No. So maybe I wasn't clear first on that. Secondly, what you said about consult wider before it goes off and works with its best mates. I think, personally, I think we do need to consult more widely. And some would say that possibly we did in certain areas in the past. But there's a lot of pressure on us to deliver value to the customer much, much quicker, much earlier now. And services to the customer, a huge amount of pressure. And I guess that's what we're responding to at the moment. But I think your point has some validity, and I will certainly take it back with me. Thank you. Any other questions? Peter.
I think so you don't feel completely savage, Simon. I think it's fair to say that the co-design process is still evolving.
Yeah.
And I'm perhaps more confident the third iteration that's about to launch might address some of your concerns. But as I said, it is still very much an evolving process. If I was to assess the two iterations so far, I think the first one was far too operational and too narrow, and then went to the other extreme, where we've got 4 really quite large projects that have taken a lot of time to bed down and develop sort of things to come out. And that process, I think, has taken, has been accepted as taking too long.
Yeah.
So hopefully the third one will be better, and it'll keep going and improve.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Well, certainly hope so. We've listened to you. We've listened to our stakeholders. We've listened to the sector, and we're trying very hard to integrate your concerns and make it better. Codesign 2016. So let's hope Peter's right. We're determined that's going to be the case. Another question at the back there.
I'm working on the basis that there's some degree of sense on your own part at the moment regarding some of these questions here. And I'd like to just maybe pose a question that links the question about the monolithic student record systems coming to an end and the CRM question. And perhaps part of the answer to both those questions is that we need to be thinking about systems in slightly different ways and categorizing what we deliver in terms of system of record as against systems of engagement. And I'm wondering, is that coming out as an item for consideration in your deliberations at this point? Would you have any thoughts as to how we should be going back to our institutions and following through on that?
That's a really good question. I think, yeah, absolutely. The name says it all. No longer systems of record. That's not sufficient anymore. They need to be systems of engagement. And I think there's a lot going on in a lot of organisations around employee engagement. We've heard presentations from business partners, internal consultancy, that kind of thing. But yeah, we need to change that approach. For me, part of the solution is around, if you like, improving the service, the service design, improving the journey for the student, and there's a lot of focus on that. And obviously being very much aware of the way they work these days. Students of all ages, in terms of bringing their own devices, in terms of expected to be able to access things anytime, any place, anywhere, and all the rest of it. So that's where I'd start with that journey, and with service design around that journey, and that's where you begin to engage. That's where I think CRM and the relationship management side is crucial. because otherwise it's the data and business intelligence. So I think that's where I'd encourage people to spend quite a bit of effort if they can, bringing the right people on board across different departments within institutions.